minstrelsy is a precursor to vaudeville. And this is a period in American history that if you want to kind of point to a point in time at which we begin to have problems with race relations, it's during the minstrel shows. Because the history, and it mentions this basically if you read through this paragraph, and I'm going to show you actually a little clip where it's from the Ken Burns documentary, and you'll get to hear a little bit of the music too, where they'll talk about the minstrel show songs and so forth. At first they were white performers. It was white entertainers, comedians and singers and jugglers and so forth. And they were putting on blackface. Blackface is made by burning cork, like the cork that comes out of wine bottles, and mixing it with water and making a black paste, and like my shirt here. And then they would put it on their face, and they would kind of overdo the lips and the eyes and so forth, and they would kind of create these caricatures of Southern blacks. And so these whites were doing all of these kind of what they thought to be impressions of the blacks. So they would speak in this kind of pre-Ebonics, I don't know what's he talking about? Massa, what did he say? That type of stuff, that kind of slurred dialect. That became part of it. And then also things like, oh, blacks like chicken, and they like watermelon, and they go after white women. And all of these things emerged during minstrelsy. And right now, you can't really get away with any sort of blackface stuff. A few years ago, Ted Danson put on blackface to give an award to his friend Whoopi Goldberg, and boy, the shit hit the fan, man. There was a lot of flack about that. It's like, how dare he? And if you look on YouTube, you'll find this. Harry Connick Jr. was in Australia doing it was kind of like Australia's Got Talent. It was like a talent show, like America's Got Talent. And a group came out in blackface, all Australian guys, white Australian guys, in blackface doing a Jackson 5 parody. And Harry Connick read them the riot act. He said, I don't know about you, I don't know in this country if you understand, but if you did that in the United States, you'd be off the air. Your show would be over. You'd be done. And so at the end of the show, he actually has to explain to them, this is a part of our history that we have a lot of trouble, and African Americans, don't really like this particular period of our history, and it's where a lot of these kind of stereotypes arise. The banjo is an instrument that gets introduced during this period. The banjo is an African-derived instrument, and we usually think of it as a hillbilly instrument, something played in Appalachian folk music or country music and stuff like that. Or if you've ever seen the movie Deliverance, there's a whole other banjo boy working at that one. But the banjo, you're going to actually hear it in this little clip that I'll play for you. They're going to explain most of this, this type of music. I bet many of you probably have not learned a lot of these type of tunes, like the Stephen Foster tunes. They're not considered politically correct anymore. They're not considered PC to do like Massa in the Cold, Cold Ground. And we sang those. I remember in 4th, 5th grade, we were singing those songs, Little Black Sambo. We learned the Little Black Sambo. So yeah, you're old enough, right?
It was common.
Yeah, you learned all that stuff. Now,
yeah,
you won't see any of those type of stories anymore. I mean, Camptown races maybe, because all there's a doo-dah, that type of stuff. But the ones that are actually kind of portraying this kind of, they're coming from minstrel shows. You really don't see those that much anymore. This clip I'm going to show you is from the Ken Burns documentary that came out in 2001 called Jazz. It's a 10 DVD set. It's a 21-hour-long documentary, typical of Ken Burns. And this one will give you a little bit of a taste of the minstrel show music. They're going to play a little bit of it for you. So let's go back to the computer, Randall, and hopefully we'll be able to, I think we can see that pretty good. We'll need to crank the volume. Oops, do we have any volume? Let's try it again. Oops, are we not getting volume on this? Oh, sorry. I found it. It's this power DVD. Ooh, this is going to give me some problems. Okay, because this has some sound that I don't want.
So-called plantation songs.
Okay.
Written by White.
Okay. Let's see. I've got to. I need to get rid of this. Let's see. Get that way down. Okay, I think that's going to work. So let's see if we can do this now. Oh, come on, you piece of crap. There we go. Oh, it's way down there. Okay. Now, try it now, Randall. Can I get some sound here? Really? Really? Okay. Yeah. Got some technical problems with this here. Let's see what we got down here. That one.
Plantation songs.
There we go.
That's it.
Oh. You know, I'm just gonna have to stop
By
that.
whites blacked up as blacks, and sometimes in later years, by blacks blacked up as whites playing blacks.
Okay, there we go.
On the surface, minstrelsy seemed simply to reinforce ugly racial stereotypes.
That was it's just YouTube, so that's kind of bad.
Minstrelsy was the most popular form of American entertainment for about 80 years in the United States, beginning in the 1840s. It produced the first body of serious pop songs, Stephen Foster, James Bland, others, songs that we still, all of us to this day, know. It produced a national humor that we all know. Why did the chicken cross the road? Who is that woman I saw you with last night? Because you had minstrel troops, very much codified, all doing the same kinds of songs, same kinds of humor, crisscrossing the whole country, not just into major cities, but to all kinds of towns, any place where there was a hall where they could perform. It was like early television. It was the first entertainment form that everybody in the United States knew. Everybody heard the same songs, everybody heard the same jokes. This had never happened before, and it wouldn't really happen again until the movies.
Despite its overt racism, the minstrel show was a blend of lively music, knockabout comedy, and sophisticated elegance. A bizarre and complicated ritual in which blacks and whites alike would interpret and misinterpret each other for decades.
I think that there's something that was so resilient in the black people, and everyone in America could recognize that resilience. And even though it was masquerading, farce and comedy and dance and a form of music, and it seemed like it was uncomplimentary, actually there was something centrally American about it. And that was the beginning of a long relationship between blacks and whites, and black entertainment and white appropriation of it, and this strange dance that we've been doing with each other since really the beginning of our relationship in America. It's too close, it's too deep a story. So you have to degrade the relationship. You have to do degrading things so that you can live with the tremendous affront to humanity that slavery was.
The first big minstrel hit was written down and performed by a white man known as Daddy Rice, who said he'd first heard it being sung by a black stable hand. Rice named the tune after the man, Jim Crow.
Okay, then I'm always surprised when, we can go back, yeah, thank you. When I ask my students, I don't think I've had one person know what Jim Crow meant. Has anybody ever heard the term Jim Crow? Have you ever studied the civil rights movement in the United States?
Yes.
Anybody know what Jim Crow means? If something's a Jim Crow law, what does that refer to? Oh, what's that? We got somebody in our TV audience here that knows. What did you say? Well, yeah, it comes from the minstrel show, but they actually started calling things Jim Crow laws. If something was Jim Crow, and that actually comes up during, you know, after the early 1900s or so. And if you have colored-only drinking fountains, white-only drinking fountains, colored-only, it's segregation basically. Anything that's Jim Crow, they're talking about segregation. So they're talking about parts in the movie, places in the movie theater where the colored section and, you know, whites only. They had a really good show on last night on Independent Lens that was talking about Hershkovitz, the guy that was actually the first black studies. He was actually a Jewish guy who did the first black African studies program. And they showed all these photos of like a Coke machine that says whites only. So they only want whites to use that Coke machine and stuff. And there was, you know, whites only restrooms, and there were Negro baseball leagues where athletes were not allowed to, whites and blacks compete against each other. It was only blacks that would compete against each other and whites and so forth. So that's all called Jim Crow. In jazz, because it's so heavily dominated by black musicians, there's actually a period of time, especially as they get a little bit further in the 1950s and stuff, where they would call things Crow Jim. And Miles Davis fell victim to this. He had a guy named Bill Evans in his band for a while, and when he would go to play in black communities, and he'd play in Harlem or South Philadelphia or South Central Los Angeles or something, he would get a lot of heat because he had this pasty-faced white guy playing piano. And he really liked the piano player, but he got so much heat from the black community, he eventually had to let Bill Evans go, and he hired Wynton Kelly, who was a black piano player, so he would have an all-black band. And that was kind of this Crow Jim, kind of like actually putting it on the other way around. So it really emerges from that particular period. Now, you don't see much about minstrelsy. Every once in a while, there'll be a television show or something that will kind of broach the subject. There was a really good movie several years ago that sort of got lost in the shuffle. It's by Spike Lee. It's called Bamboozled.